the weather's looking pretty nice for the week. Hopefully it still holds up for the weekend, and I'll be able to go on the drone adventure again. That's been a while. I read this interesting local news today about a baby that was born, and it was 14 pounds. Holy moly, 14-pound baby at birth. Apparently it's supposed to be one of the biggest babies here in the province. I don't know if they actually confirmed it. Steve, you had a comment here saying, when am I finally going to reach my destination, as I've been walking here forever? Think of it as symbolism, as Transport Canada and their drone laws just makes me confused and I'm lost. So I'll be walking here forever until you people help me figure out why these laws are the way they are, because they make absolutely no sense. Let's see how long I've been walking so far according to this when I had the thing on. 2,538 kilometers about? Is that too much? A lot of you guys' comments as well can actually connect with something that was on my mind, because it seems like here, P-White, the commercial helicopter pilot, you responded to the video. Although I'm a little disappointed because you kind of avoided the essence of the questions technically, but you actually brought up some points, so I thought it actually relates to something that was on my mind. When it comes to the airspace here, I mean, one of the narratives when it comes to safety to ban the recreational drone flyers in so many ways is, if we're flying in the air, then we need to abide by the same rules as every other aviation pilot. I mean, in theory, on paper, I guess it makes sense, but in practicality and reality, it doesn't in many ways. Like you even said here as a comment, Sky High Scotty. I'm assuming you wanted your username to be Sky High Scotty. Maybe it was taken, but anyways, yeah, like you even mentioned, for example, you wanted to take, for example, like some quick footages, but because in your area it's completely banned, it's like a no-fly zone. And like you said here, you don't understand why can't you fly 20 feet above ground level, for example. I mean, what harm is that gonna do? I mean, like what many of you guys say, I mean, if there's a plane or a helicopter going that low, you got more things to worry about than a drone, in my opinion. Alright, so about the topic about drones, to continue the conversation, for those that didn't see the previous video before, it was about a recreational drone flyer like myself having a conversation with a commercial helicopter pilot. I feel that the drone laws for the recreational users are completely ridiculous, they're over the top, whereas to my understanding, the commercial helicopter pilot feels that everything is fantastic and they should have done even more. And so I basically questioned, how can this be? And I gave all the facts, and you finally gave some responses, where again though, unfortunately, I feel you basically ignored a lot of the essence of the question in many ways, which I'll describe. So you start off the response by giving me a link or a description of Transport Canada's, I guess, role on how they make laws, what they're responsible for, and essentially you explain how, in your opinion, the regulations were long overdue. So if I'm not mistaken, you're implying that everything that was done so far in terms of how the law was put out, like, it's normal. They basically took their time, it was well thought out, like, if anything, they were just too slow in dumping it out. To me, that doesn't make sense, because even the first day when I learned about these dumb recreational drone laws, they had a press conference of sorts, and he made it sound like it was like an emergency, like something happened, like I have no choice, I have to dump this out. Like he makes it sound like there were drones crashing into helicopters, there were drones like hitting people, causing so much harm, so it's like, okay, no choice, I have to dump this out. Like there was a sense of real urgency and desperation, and in my opinion, that basically made a lot of the public fear about the drones. I'll try to find some of the quotes and I'll post it up here, but yeah, again, if everything was smooth sailing, like this is normal, then why do you feel the need to present it in a way that's, the thing is so dangerous, like I have to put this out right now, or at the same time, why didn't you take your time talking to the recreational drone flyers in many ways? Now you did make a point here saying this does not include recreational drone use. In terms of the laws, it's basically something general. I mean, this is something an aviation expert or someone would have to further clarify, because I don't understand it personally. I would imagine the point of you making that point as well is so that maybe a person like myself will see, okay, like they didn't specifically target the recreational person, like that's just how it is. They made a law which just happens to affect the recreational person. So, you know, nothing personal, it's just they have no other choice. I don't believe that, because I think they actually specifically targeted the drone flyers, like recreational people, just based on all the facts that are presented. I mean, just to make the point there, I mean, as a lot of people know, I went to Transport Canada and Mark Garneau's Twitter at times where there was some pretty hilarious tweets in general, like hilarious in a sense of very sad, where like Mark Garneau, for example, he retweeted something about Prince William's helicopter almost like colliding with a drone and all that. And when I basically published that, like on my vlog, a lot of people from the UK even came out and say, you know, this is completely fake, like that news, it's over-exaggerated or whatever. I mean, for a transport minister of Canada to retweet something like that, to me shows he's specifically targeting recreational drone flyers. Like I mentioned before, in many ways, it's kind of like they're trying to find justification for these really stupid laws. I don't see any effort so far where it was, oh no, like it's just an unfortunate situation, so I'm trying my best to change this. No, like they constantly dump stuff out that basically fear-mongers people to say, hey, this is dangerous, stop doing that. I mean, if you even look at their Twitter feeds, like in Transport Canada, or any of their social media sites, for the most part, when you look at drones, negative, 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 negative. There's not really one positive thing that I saw anyways when I checked it. So again, to me, that shows they specifically targeted recreational drone flyers. This was not an accident. Because realistically, if it's about safety and regulations, then everyone should have to abide by the same thing regardless. I mean, the animals are just another example of it, like the best example. I mean, if people's argument where keep your drones away from the animals because it creates too much noise, then in my opinion, all commercial flyers as well, you should be banned from flying near an animal. Because that shouldn't make it right if that is your narrative. That a recreational drone flyer shouldn't fly near an animal because there's too much noise, and they shouldn't either. This is actually an interesting statement. I'm kind of interested how everyone else feels about this actually. Like you say, for example, you don't think that comparing the dangers of birds, knives, etc. is constructive or even relevant to this discussion? In my opinion, it's perfectly relevant because the narrative is safety. If it's about safety, objects hitting airplanes, potentially crashing, these are all relevant in many ways. Does it make sense to you? Like, why should you have more privilege where you are an acceptable form of risk to fly up there, whereas these people you consider way too dangerous in comparison? In one of my very first comparisons when I learned about this law, it's like that silly example of the skiers arguing with the snowboarders, saying the snowboards are so dangerous in comparison, like they should all be banned, get out of here. In my opinion, that's how ridiculous that is if you say for some reason like it's irrelevant, it's not constructive. And I'll actually link that video below for those who've never seen it before. It's kind of hilarious when you look at it in a modern day age. Now you did say here, yes, birds pose a danger and bird strikes with an aircraft do happen, but drone use is something that Transport Canada can regulate to mitigate the risk. My personal thought is if you don't really understand the situation in this case in terms of the technology, how they run in detail, then you shouldn't make stupid laws that ban everything in general. But to that point though, like the interesting thing is like you're implying, hey, they have the authority to do this because they can like technically manage drones since it's in the air. So they're basically exercising their rights in many ways. But there's actually an interesting user comment here, like Chester, like he even brought the point about cameras. I mean, a lot of people who use cameras for devious reasons and they get punished for it if they do something wrong. But why don't they regulate cameras in the same way? I mean, why don't you ban telephoto lens? I even made a video of that before. I mean, people with this weird notion that drone cameras in general gets these super tight telephoto close-ups of you. Why not ban cameras? And he's even saying here, like for a lot of the points, it's because a lot more people have this technology. So do you think the government can get away with regulating something like this when most of the average people use this? I mean, in my opinion, that's probably more what this is about. A lot of people are ignorant about the topics of drones, so they can, because they know not as many people will be willing to do the research to understand it, to just be like, okay, yeah, you say safety, okay, so ban this. It goes back to this saying too on how yesterday I talked about how people that did everything the formal way, they basically got template responses for the most part. Is it because the government knows, like, not everyone obviously uses a drone nowadays, it's still kind of an emerging technology, so they think they can get away with these laws? Because again, in my opinion, like I didn't hear your opinion about it. Do you think, for example, it's right for people to put their full name and address and everything like that outside of the drone? Like that makes perfect sense to you? I would, like again, I would imagine in any other industry, whether it be cars or even like say airplanes or helicopters, that would be unacceptable. And to bring up your point again, like with that, you said you think they should do more. Oh, what's next? I should put my social insurance number? Oh, why don't I list all my PIN numbers for my bank accounts and everything like that while I'm at it? I mean, is that what you mean by the government should be doing more with the regulations for a recreational drone flyer? You then talk about what concerns you is essentially people that can buy a drone off the shelf without any understanding of civil aviation, as you say, and basically it poses a danger to people. And you're suggesting they should do things like a licensing system. I actually agree in many ways. For example, for myself, when I started, I actually tried really hard to find things like courses, for example, to learn about it, but nobody had anything available that basically taught you how to, say, fly drones or at a reasonable price. Like, I'm not paying $3,000, for example, just to learn how to fly a drone. That's completely inaccessible for most people, just for a fun hobby. And because of that, do you know what I did? Maybe this will be deja vu for you. I went into open fields like this to practice flying. Because even I know I need practice if I want to be a safe flyer. And that's the ironic thing about these laws. They make it so ridiculous and stupid where even a responsible person like me, I can't get practice anymore. Don't you think that makes me a more dangerous flyer if I can't practice out here? Because of some ridiculous law saying I have to be away from 9 kilometers from every single airport and helipad, which makes absolutely no sense for a place like this. But overall, in terms of things like a licensing system, I actually agree with that. It actually makes way more sense than what they're doing now. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm just too bad there's no way to verify it. Like, I was actually reading, even when it comes to commercial drone flyers and Transport Canada, apparently employees were saying the SFOC is actually really stupid. It takes up too much time. So in my opinion, it's actually better if they had a licensing system in some way. Now, you commented about the helipads and the heliport, about those ones that are only used, like, say, once or twice, where I brought up the point how that doesn't make sense to ban like a drone flyer there for the whole year if someone's there just once or twice a year. And you're basically saying it's because it's for emergency use. So if you're thinking of it from a safety point of view, it doesn't make sense to allow that to happen, because in a time of emergency they don't have time to alert the drone flyer. So better, just to ban them all again, like don't even go to this airspace in general. Now, you say that's completely unrealistic for a drone flyer and the emergency people to work together, as an example, so that's something that's fair for everyone to share the airspace, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, did you read the news in the US, for example, in terms of the drones taking 2 steps forward? I believe some of the articles were titled as. They're making things like the airspace maps and all that stuff like open to third-party developers, so that there's better communication between, say, a drone flyer and maybe like other aircrafts. Like, this way, I would assume, because of this advancement, you won't have to do it such a dinosaur Stone Age way, where all the laws are written in a way that was only intended for people that fly huge aircrafts. Maybe people don't need to phone in anymore when, if he's only flying, come on, like 20 feet in the air or something like that. Is that realistically, like, is there going to be an accident over that? Do you really need to phone in for something like that small? And even they're saying too, I mean, realistically, if a guy is just flying up near his house or property like a real estate agent to take a photo, why do you need to go through all these ridiculous aviation procedures for stuff like that? I mean, there has to be balance. And again, like for you, I feel you're only thinking about yourself mostly, as opposed to everybody else as well, and how it can be worked out together. Because in terms of sharing the airspace, I mean, since this is Transport Canada, let's use a road, for example, with emergency vehicles. Are you telling me because there's an emergency at times where an ambulance or fire trucks has to go through the road that, okay, because of that, everybody else, you can never use the road, as an example, just because emergency vehicles could go through the road? I mean, if you think about it, who shares the road? A car? A motorcycle? A bus? A truck? A pedestrian like me that just walks across the road? Someone on rollerblades? I mean, you're telling me we're so juvenile that we can't like share the road and understand, or people have common sense where there's an emergency vehicle there, priority, get out of the way. You're telling me people don't have the common sense to do that? Like, in many ways, why do you feel people don't have the common sense to do that with like a drone and all that? I mean, who here on this channel watching this video would be that stupid if they saw an emergency helicopter, or they're fully aware that something is coming by, that they would not, for example, land their drone because they know that's a priority? I mean, you might have the occasional idiots, like you say, that might do it once in a while, so you can't take the risk, but does that make sense even for the road? I mean, there's idiots, same thing. I've seen it many times. When an ambulance go by, there's idiots that don't pull on the side. I'm like, what are you doing? Or same thing, pedestrians, they actually try to race like the light, even though all the cars stopped, but there's an ambulance coming, because that's why they stopped. The guy still runs in the road. Is that a reason to, again, to put such ridiculous laws saying, okay, that's it, no one can use the roads anymore except for emergency vehicles? Doesn't make sense. I mean, with your mentality so far and what you presented to me, I mean, I'll ask, like you personally, for example, because I'll assume you represent a majority of the commercial helicopter pilots, as an example, who is really in supportive of these laws in every single way. Why can't you share the airspace with a recreational drone flyer like myself? I'm not getting in your way, like in sites like this. Like, why can't you just share it? I'm not gonna go that high, for example. Like, is that scary? Like, why should I be barred from flying like in a place like this again? I mean, do you have more rights than me, if that makes sense? Like, for some reason, like, you're more special? Like, that you should have access to everything, and for some reason I'm like a peon, for example, that I can't manage or have the common sense to know, hey, don't fly near these things? Like sharing the airspace, if I saw you as a helicopter flying below here, I mean, people should not be worried about the drone, they should be worried about you as an example. Isn't that fair to say? I mean, same thing. Because of that, I wouldn't say, hey, ban all helicopters from flying in areas like this. And so ultimately, like the thing I said in the beginning, I don't feel you answered the essence of the questions, which was essentially you're saying the laws are so fantastic with the way they're written, they make sense in every single way, and that they should do even more. So, for example, do you agree that people should be phoning 911, for example, because of someone flying here? Basically, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law because, in your opinion, there's a chance that they could hit a helicopter, as an example, and cause all this destruction. I mean, you didn't really answer stuff like that, and I think it's actually really important. In terms of doing more, I mean, again, when you look at things like their social media feeds, they're fear-mongering people. In many ways, basically spewing out the same stuff that you're basically telling people as well. Yes, it's so dangerous, like even the tiniest drone can destroy a helicopter rotor, and that's what's in people's minds. And in my opinion, I still stand on my point. I disagree with that. I mean, it's not an argument so much about, okay, can this thing do it, or are the laws just so ridiculous that they stop people from doing it in a really safe way as well? Because when you fearmonger people, I mean, just like as an example, did you watch the video yesterday? About basically, I heard a story of a 13-year-old kid's drone getting shot down by a gun. I'm even reading like user comments, like for Rick, for example, he says he has like a son and they're actually around that area. Do you think it's okay? They should make the laws even crazier just to encourage nut jobs like that to shoot down drones because it's justified? Because you keep saying it's dangerous and dangerous. I mean, again, I still haven't heard your response about things like phoning 911. You said it yourself. You will contact a local authority for everyone that breaks the law. I mean, what if someone, again, is flying here, it's technically within 9 kilometers of an airport. Let's say someone did that, you're gonna phone 911 on them? What can I say? Just ridiculous. I just hope you'll open up your mind and realize, you know, in many ways, it doesn't make sense. They shouldn't be doing more in terms of the way they're doing it now. They should be doing it more effectively by working with the people, not against people. I mean, just a quick comment about the reporting site system too, like where you mentioned there was incident reports. I mean, I would even ask just like what was published in the US, well, what exactly did they mean? Because in many cases, even in the US, people couldn't even identify what it was, and they ended up in many cases being nothing. Like in some places, the quote drone, which is the plastic bag, like in the air. Not to say there isn't any real danger per se, or something dangerous can happen with a drone person flying near an aircraft and so forth, but realistically, how much of them were actually that critical of a danger, as opposed to, like, let's say someone flying here right now and the complaint was basically launched, oh, there's someone flying a drone here. Does it really mean anything in the long run? I mean, the ironic thing in terms of reports with drones, if the narrative of this law is they're protecting regular people from recreational drone flyers because they're dangerous, ironically, with all the news I've seen so far, like the one yesterday about the drone getting shot down with a gun, it seems like the recreational drone flyers are more in danger because of these laws. Kind of ironic. It's something I hope you sincerely think about too before you say again that these things aren't overboard. Man, is it just me or do those ducks grow really fast? Anyways, see you guys later.